We are obligated by our size to live and work in close proximity to one another. We are as people intertwined. The actions of one creates ripples that affect us all. In 2005, a group of local developers began the process to build a 7-star hotel on the Southlands property in Warwick. Not much was known about the project until the application was delivered to the planning department in late 2006. Plans called for an opulent hotel to be opened by mid-2008. According to the promotional website, the hotel will be situated on 37 acres of natural beauty on Bermuda's prestigious South Shore. Jumeirah Southlands will have 300 spacious balcony suites, including 17 two-story suites built into beach cliffs, as well as 5 restaurants and bars, a nightclub, and an outdoor entertainment space. A complete spa, over 1,700 feet of beach, numerous pools, an executive conference center, and an equestrian center. There will also be a collection of luxury boutiques on property. Approximately half the accommodations will be offered for fractional vacation residence ownership. Who could possibly argue against a chance to revitalize Bermuda's tourist industry with such a world-class facility? The Bermuda Environmental and Sustainability Taskforce, or B.E.S.T, is a non-political volunteer organization formed by concerned Bermudians and other island residents in response to the threat of unrestrained destruction and development of Bermuda's South Shore. B.E.S.T believes the Jumeirah Southlands proposal, when considered alongside the other hotel developments seeking not only approval but the lifting of environmental protections, threatens to overwhelm Bermuda's resources, infrastructure, and natural environment. The organization believes government needs to develop and adhere to a sustainable tourism policy that works for Bermuda from 2007 going forward. Since formation in late 2006, B.E.S.T has worked diligently to raise awareness of these issues and encourage fellow Bermudians to voice their concerns. On March 23rd, the Bermuda Environmental and Sustainability Task Force held a town hall meeting at West Pembroke Primary School to present information to the public on the Southlands development and the Special Development Order, or SDO. Over 250 people attended. Panelist Rudolph Hollis, former director of the Department of Planning with 32 years' experience in the department, spoke specifically to the minister's draft SDO, which, if issued, would grant final approval. As Mr. Hollis pointed out, there were several reasons why it was premature to issue an SDO granting final approval.
As a career civil servant, we are obviously taught and trained not to take things personally. When we assess applications, we have to be very open-minded and simply rely on our education, the policies of the day, and precedents, and simply deal with the facts as they're presented to you. My presentation speaks to the SDO as it's commonly known, and what I'd like to do is simply just to look at the facts as it relates to the SDO, and not to be personal in terms of the actual development of the Southlands property. In this case, this particular SDO seems to be somewhat superficial. The reason that I say that is that, and I am being objective, is that when I read through the SDO, and with all the various forms of advice that the minister and expertise that she had, I'm somewhat concerned as to how this decision was made to issue an SDO in final. What I've done is I've taken the SDO and looked at the different conditions in regards to this development. And the first key point that I did raise was, why has this been issued for final approval? When it would appear, based on the presentation that was made and the plans that were made, not a whole lot of particular detail went into the drafting of those plans. They look more as if they were artist impressions rather than detailed drawings. Well, if you look at the actual design concept for this particular building, you would probably say it's fairly unique to Bermuda. I understand. Unit satisfied that with the various consultees that the minister has, whether or not they have been used in assessing this application, For example, there's a statutory body in the Architects Advisory Panel. Their responsibility would normally be to look at something like this, pick it apart, and determine whether or not this is something that would be acceptable for Bermuda. Now, I can recall back in the early 80s, I believe, or the late 80s, when energy was a key factor in Bermuda, particularly in city buildings. And the architects at that time came up with the clever idea of using reflective glass. The problem that they found with the reflective glass was that the birds kept flying right into it. My first point. If this particular design is going to be used on the South Shore, and if we consider the long-tailed bird to be important to Bermuda, it's going to be catastrophic for those birds who's going to perceive all that glass, whether or not it's reflective or not. We all know that if you have plate glass, at some angle it's going to appear like a mirror. They will have the assumption that they're flying along in the sky and they will fly right into this building. That's going to be a major problem. As you go along further with these conditions, it would normally be that the Architects Advisory Panel would give that advice that this may not be the most appropriate design for the South Shore. I did not get the impression that that was done. It causes me some concern that the final approval has been given without those matters been in place, because for years we had the issue with pumping sewage out into the South Shore and creating an environmental problem. If you already have approval, then there is a commitment to a development, which means that you have to compromise some standard along the way in order for that development to work. My issue with that is that are we now going to see the continuation of this pumping, or is it going to be a sewage plant put in place? Those are the sorts of things that one needs to be satisfied before you can say it's okay for you to do this development. The applicant shall obtain permission for staff housing. In the last few years, one of the key issues in planning was the need to provide housing. Housing that's affordable housing. My concern with this condition is that if housing is a problem, particularly affordable housing, then why are we approving for final approval a development if you have not been satisfied that you have somewhere for these people to stay? The problem is that this special development order does not give approval for that housing, which means that there's no guarantee that that housing will get an approval. If the housing doesn't get approved, it means that these people who are the staff will have to look throughout Bermuda to find housing for them. It becomes a vicious cycle because now the housing scenario continues. And what ends up happening is most Bermudians, the average Bermudian, ends up competing once again for housing that they would not normally have to.
Dr. David Wingate, OBE, is an ornithologist, naturalist, and conservationist. In 1951, as a schoolboy, he helped rediscover a bird species thought extinct since the 1620s, the Bermuda petrel, or cahao. Dr. Wingate served as Bermuda's Chief Conservation Officer for 34 years, retiring the post in 2000. His lifelong efforts to bring back the cahao from near extinction led him to undertake the restoration of Nonsuch Island's pre-colonial ecology. Dr. Wingate has shown that great things can be accomplished by understanding nature.
The waves are on top of that, and they wash away the beach temporarily and start eroding the cliff behind. As this is a very soft, young dune formation.